Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed my review of Rogue One, and I know that was probably a pretty divisive video. Before I get to that movie with A New Hope, I wanted to come back and explain to you why I believe Solo is just a better film than Rogue One. And it's not because Solo has people like Han Solo and Chewbacca and how they met and stuff like that. It's not even Lando, because Lando, out of those just three characters, that could have just carried that movie to be a better film, but it doesn't. There are flaws with that film, but there's just so many more flaws with Rogue One, and I laid out a lot of them in my previous video. But now comparing the two, I would say K2 is a better droid than L3. I explained that K2 just had that emotional type of connection with me and with most of the time with the audience, and L3 was just kind of like that throwaway droid that was put in there for a political stance. And that's why I believe that I was more impacted with K2's death than L3's death, even though L3 does serve a little bit more of a purpose outside of him, or K2 does help them find the plans to the Death Star and stuff like that, and protects them, locks them in and stuff like that. But L3 gets put into the Millennium Falcon, so she's technically still alive in a way. The writing for Solo was just better. Even characters that we didn't know before were just so much more developed and just a little bit better than the ones that we met in Rogue One. Like I said in the last video, I couldn't find the flaw for Jyn Erso. I couldn't find the flaw for Cassian. The side characters of Baze, Kuro, Body, and K2, you don't need to have a flaw for those characters. Usually the flaws are reserved for either the protagonist or the co-protagonist in some stories. Those are the ones that have the flaw because they're usually the reflections of each other. Even though K2 was the reflection more of Cassian, and that's a big problem because I would more rather have Cassian be the reflection to Jyn as far as character archetypes, but I couldn't see the reflection of each other. I just couldn't see that. But you see Beckett being kind of like this mentor to Han Solo, and then he loses a lot, but he's still being himself regardless of what he's lost. That shows me that he's had time and experience more with death and loss than with what we saw with Cassian, who has been in the fight since he was 6 years old, but yet he's still having trouble with some stuff. Like, I'm not saying you want to get totally emotionless whenever it comes to death and stuff like that, but you kind of be able to breeze through it a little bit easier the more you see it, and it's just easier for you to, alright, move on. And that's what Beckett does. So you see that even though he just lost his girlfriend or wife or whatever they were, and then he just lost his best pilot, one of his best friends on this job, and then now he's stuck with Han and Chewie that he doesn't know, but he's still willing to work with them and go and work with, or to try to clear his name and get, even though he doesn't want them to. They kind of force him in. And then Kira was just such a better character as far as development. You see that her arc through that movie was her going from being Han's, runner buddy and Corellia to now being at the end of the movie head of Crimson Dawn. Essentially, is what I'm pretty sure Darth Maul was still head of Crimson Dawn because he was wearing that pendant, but I'm pretty sure she was now one of the top people in Crimson Dawn. So you see that not just the character arc as far as her job and where she went with that, but you see how she changed because she was kind of naive at the beginning, and then she becomes kind of heartless in a way. And even though you can't have that downwards type of arc, it's still an arc. But you don't see that in Rogue One. You really don't see that many arcs from the protagonists, the main characters that you are caring so much for. You get it more out of K2 than you do out of Jyn and Cassian. Jyn, I couldn't tell if she was different from the beginning or the end. She looked like the same character, and you don't want that. Even though that they were going for, so you can have it. But it has to be a tragedy. And that really wasn't a tragedy, because usually as far as storytelling aspects, yes, they died and that is a tragic event. Through my schooling, you learn that as far as storytelling, tragedy comes more in with the way that the characters are, and how would I phrase it? It's they want something but they don't get it, is essentially what it is. But they get it in Rogue One. They get the Death Star plans. They give hope back to the rebellion. They get all of that. All they do is die, and that is not a tragedy because they lived out their purpose. And if you live out your purpose, it's not necessarily tragic. It is sad, but it's not tragic. But you say like the Solo film, and you get Beckett, and they're on that job with the electric-footed troopers and the magnetic-footed troopers, and then you have his girlfriend die. You get their pilot die, the Ardenian, and then it's just like that. To me, was more of a tragedy because they wanted a job. The job went sideways, but they knew what they had to do. They died on that job. They didn't get what they wanted. That is more of a tragedy than what Rogue One was. So that was most of the reasons, storytelling-wise, writing-wise, character development. Visually, it looked the same as far as visual effects, cinematography, all that stuff. That is usually almost always universally good with any Star Wars film. So it comes down to what makes them different from each other, and it's usually the writing, the character development, the way that they arc, stuff like that, and you get more of that out of Solo than you do out of Rogue One. We could live without these films. We didn't need these films, so please don't use that as a reason to hate or think that Rogue One is better than Solo because we didn't need to see Solo. We didn't need to see the Kessel Run, but we didn't need to see them get the plans either. So again, that's my thoughts. I do love both films. I will always love Star Wars. If it has that stamp on it, I'm likely seeing it. But if I'm rating them, I usually have the top, the other 10 movies at 1, and then Rogue One is just a number 2. Because while I do love Revenge of the Sith, is usually like my go-to Star Wars film for me. Each Star Wars movie and each Star Wars trilogy gives me something, and I can't discount that. But Rogue One just doesn't do anything really for me except for kind of hurting when K2 dies and Kiro dies and Baze dies. To me, I love the fact that they all die and you get that badass moment from Vader. But to me, that's the only redeeming quality is the Battle of Scarif in this movie. Criticize me. Chastise me. Go ahead. I want that. I want to talk. I want to discuss this with you guys because that's what these videos are for. I'm trying to reinvigorate discussion and not hate in the Star Wars community. I'll see you tomorrow whenever I start on the original trilogy. And I will also want to say that I'm going to try to release more than one a day as far as these videos. If I can, I'll try to release all 3 original trilogy plus the recap of that the trilogy tomorrow, and then do the sequel trilogy on Saturday. But we'll see. The reason I've only been doing one a day is due to class. I've had class the last 4 days, and I was just tired, and I could only do one a day. But now I ain't got nothing to do. I've got most of my classwork done, so you will probably be seeing more than one video a day. So be on the lookout. Talk to you later.